I never thought my own daughter would steal everything from me and throw me out like garbage. But when she showed up at my tiny apartment door just 1 week later, sobbing and begging for help, I realized karma works faster than I ever imagined. What happened in those 7 days? The truth will shock you as much as it shocked me. If you've ever felt betrayed by family, you need to hear this story. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this gets darker than you think. The taxi dropped me off in front of my own house, and I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the unfamiliar car in my driveway. After 3 weeks in the hospital, recovering from emergency gallbladder surgery, all I wanted was to collapse into my own bed and forget the nightmare of sterile rooms and endless medications. But when I reached for my keys, they wouldn't turn in the lock. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to have them destroy your life? Because I'm about to tell you how my own daughter became my worst enemy. I rang the doorbell of my own home, confusion mixing with the lingering pain from my surgery. The door opened, and there stood Sarah, my 34-year-old daughter, with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, almost pleased. "Mom," she said, not moving aside to let me in. "We need to talk." "Sarah, honey, what's wrong with the locks? I can't get in." I tried to push past her, but she blocked the doorway. That's when I noticed him lurking behind her. Jake, her husband of 2 years, wearing a smirk that made my skin crawl. "The locks were changed for security reasons," Sarah said, her voice as flat as a stranger's. "I'm protecting the family assets." Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. "What are you talking about? This is my house, Sarah. I raised you here. Let me in. I need to rest." She pulled out a manila folder and thrust it towards me. "Actually, Mom, legally speaking, it's not your house anymore. While you were indisposed, I used the power of attorney you signed to transfer the deed into my name, for your own protection, of course." The world started spinning. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself. "Power of attorney? I never signed any power of attorney." Jake stepped forward, that horrible smirk widening. "Oh, but you did, Margaret. Remember when the nurse asked you to sign some medical documents before your surgery? You were pretty out of it on those pain medications." The memory came flooding back. A blur of pre-surgery preparations, forms shoved in front of me while I was barely conscious from the pre-op medications. I thought I was signing consent forms. But now, "You forged documents while I was sedated?" My voice cracked. "Sarah, how could you do this to me? I'm your mother." "You're getting older, Mom. Your judgment isn't what it used to be. This house is worth $400,000. Too much responsibility for someone in your condition." Sarah's words were rehearsed, practiced. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. I stared at my daughter, the little girl I'd raised alone after her father walked out. The child I'd worked 3 jobs to support. The young woman whose college education I'd paid for by mortgaging this very house. This house that had been in our family for 30 years. "Sarah, please, I don't understand what's happening. Just let me come inside so we can talk about this properly." "There's nothing to discuss." She started closing the door. "I've already spoken with our attorney. Everything is legal and binding. You should find somewhere else to stay." "Somewhere else to stay? This is my home." "Not anymore." Jake's voice was filled with satisfaction. "And Margaret? Don't bother calling Sarah. We've decided it's best if we don't have contact for a while. She's blocked your number." The door slammed shut in my face. I stood there on my own front porch, suitcase in hand, staring at the door that had welcomed me home for 3 decades. The "for sale" sign in the front yard that I hadn't noticed before now seemed to mock me. They weren't just stealing my house. They were already planning to sell it. My hands shook as I tried calling Sarah's cell phone. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Blocked. As I walked away from the only home I'd ever truly known, dragging my suitcase behind me like a refugee, one question burned in my mind. How had my own daughter planned this so perfectly? And what had I done to deserve such calculated cruelty? Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a nightmare that would test everything I thought I knew about family, love, and justice. The Sunset Motel was exactly as depressing as it sounded. Peeling paint, flickering neon sign, and the kind of carpet that had seen too many secrets. But at $62 a night, it was all I could afford with the $300 cash I'd had in my purse. That's when I discovered the second betrayal. My bank card was declined at the front desk. Declined. I called the bank from the grimy payphone in the lobby, hands trembling as I dialed. "Ma'am, your account shows a balance of 0, the representative said with practiced sympathy. "There were several LRAT withdrawals made this week using your power of attorney authorization." Sarah hadn't just stolen my house. She'd cleaned out my entire life savings, $43,000 that had taken me 15 years to accumulate. Would you fight back, or would you just give up? Because what I discovered next changed everything. I sat on the motel bed that night, surrounded by the few belongings I'd managed to grab from the hospital, and tried to make sense of how my life had imploded so completely. The room smelled like cigarettes and broken dreams, but it was better than sleeping in my car, if I'd still had a car. Apparently, Sarah had sold it for my own good, too. The memories came flooding back in waves. Sarah at 5, crying in my arms after her father left. "Don't worry, baby," I'd whispered into her hair. "It's just you and me now. We'll take care of each other forever." I'd worked as a night shift nurse, a weekend house cleaner, and sold Avon cosmetics just to keep food on the table and clothes on her back. When Sarah got into college, I'd taken out a second mortgage on the house to pay her tuition. "Mom, I promise I'll pay you back," she'd said, hugging me tight on graduation day. "You sacrificed everything for me. I'll never forget that." Apparently, forgetting was easier than I'd thought. I tried calling my sister Linda, but the conversation went cold fast. "Oh, Margaret," Linda's voice was filled with pity. "Sarah called us last week. She's so worried about you. She said you've been having memory problems, making poor decisions. Maybe this is for the best?" "Memory problems? Linda, I'm fine. Sarah stole my house and my money." "Now, honey, that doesn't sound like the Sarah we know. She's always been such a responsible girl. Maybe you should consider that assisted living facility she mentioned." The line went dead. My own family had already been poisoned. Against me. As I lay there in the dark, listening to sirens and shouting from the parking lot, I found something in the bottom of my purse that I'd forgotten about. A business card that someone had slipped me during my hospital stay. "Detective Morris, Private Investigations, when the truth matters." I'd thought it was strange at the time, but now it felt like a lifeline. The next morning, I used the motel's Wi-Fi to do some research on my phone. What I found made my blood run cold. My house was already listed for sale at $420,000. The listing had gone live just 2 days after I'd been locked out. Sarah and Jake were moving fast. But then I found something else, something that made my heart race. In the real estate photos, I could see boxes stacked in my living room, and Jake was visible in the background of one shot, talking on his phone with an expression of pure panic. They weren't just stealing from me. They were running from something. As I stared at that business card, a new feeling replaced the despair I'd been drowning in. Anger. Pure, burning rage that started in my chest and spread through my entire body like fire. My daughter thought she could destroy me and walk away clean. She thought I was just a weak old woman who would accept her fate and disappear quietly. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Detective Morris looked like he'd stepped out of a noir film, rumpled coat, tired eyes, and the kind of face that had seen too much. His office above a Thai restaurant wasn't much to look at, but the wall behind his desk was covered with certificates and newspaper clippings about cases he'd solved. "Mrs. Henderson," he said, studying the documents I'd brought, "I have to be honest. What happened to you isn't unusual. Elder fraud is a growing business, and unfortunately, family members are often the perpetrators. Sometimes the people you love most are capable of the darkest betrayals. But what if I told you this was just the beginning? But there's something about your case that caught my attention," Morris continued, pulling up files on his computer. "Your daughter, Sarah. This isn't her first time playing these games." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" 3 months ago, Sarah Patterson, that's her married name now, was reported to her employer's HR department for discrepancies in client accounts. She works at Meridian Financial, handling estate planning for elderly clients. The investigation was dropped when the missing money mysteriously reappeared. He turned his monitor toward me. The screen showed bank records, dates, amounts. "Your daughter has a gambling problem, Mrs. Henderson, a bad one. She's been placing online bets for the past 8 months, sports, poker, even cryptocurrency trading. She's lost over $80,000. The room felt like it was spinning. $80,000? How is that possible? It gets worse. Morris clicked to another screen. Her husband Jake isn't just unemployed. He's in debt to a loan shark named Vincent Caruso. Vincent operates out of the industrial district, and he's not known for his patience with people who owe him money. The pieces started falling into place. So they stole my house to pay off Jake's debts? That's what I thought initially. But then I did some more digging. Morris's expression grew darker. Mrs. Henderson, your house is worth $400,000, but their combined debts total over $200,000. Why steal so much more than they need? I stared at him, unable to process what he was telling me. I don't understand. Because they're planning to run. Sarah already put in her notice at work. Her last day is Friday. Jake's been selling their furniture on Craigslist. They're liquidating everything. The betrayal cut deeper with each revelation. They're going to disappear with my money. There's more. Morris leaned forward, his voice dropping. I ran a background check on Jake's family. His mother, Elena Patterson, is a piece of work. She used to be a real estate attorney until she lost her license for fraud 5 years ago. She's been investigated for elder abuse in 3 different states. My blood ran cold. You think she's involved? Mrs. Henderson, I don't think your daughter came up with this plan on her own. The power of attorney fraud, the timing, the legal documentation, it's too sophisticated. Someone with experience coached her through this. He pulled out a thick file and opened it. Elena Patterson has been linked to at least 6 cases of family-based elder fraud over the past decade. She targets families with valuable assets and convinces younger family members to steal from their elderly relatives. She provides the legal expertise. They provide the family access. I felt sick. So Sarah isn't even the real criminal here? Oh, she's definitely a criminal. But she's also a victim. Elena's manipulation tactics are sophisticated. She finds families with financial stress and plants seeds of doubt about the older generation's mental capacity. She makes it seem like they're protecting their inheritance rather than stealing. Morris showed me photos. Elena was an elegant woman in her 60s with silver hair and cold eyes. In one photo, she was walking out of a courthouse next to a young man who looked devastated. That's Marcus Chen, Morris explained. Elena convinced him to steal his grandmother's retirement fund last year. By the time he realized what he'd done, Elena had disappeared with half the money. Marcus is now in prison for elder abuse. The horror of it all crashed over me. My daughter wasn't just a thief. She was being manipulated by a professional criminal who destroyed families for a living. Can we stop them? I whispered. But Morris smiled for the first time since I'd met him. Mrs. Henderson, Elena Patterson made one crucial mistake this time. She doesn't know that I've been tracking her for 2 years, building a case. Your daughter just handed us the evidence we need to bring down an entire operation. He reached for his phone. But first, we need to move fast. Because if Elena realizes we're onto her, she and your daughter will disappear forever. And Mrs. Henderson? Yes? There's something else you need to know. Sarah isn't Elena's only target right now. She's got 3 other families in her crosshairs, and we think she's planning something much bigger than just stealing houses. As Morris started making calls, one thought echoed in my mind. How many other families was this monster destroying? And was my daughter already too deep in Elena's web to be saved? The surveillance photos Detective Morris spread across his desk made my stomach turn. Elena Patterson wasn't just Jake's mother. She was a predator who had been stalking my family for over 2 years. She's been planning this since before Sarah and Jake got married, Morris explained, pointing to a photo of Elena sitting in a car outside my house. The timestamp showed it was taken 18 months ago. Elena researches her targets extensively. She knew about your house, your savings, even your medical history. Evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it marries into your family and destroys you from within. The photos showed Elena meeting with Sarah at coffee shops, restaurants, even at Sarah's workplace. In every image, Elena looked composed and manipulative, while Sarah appeared increasingly stressed and confused. Elena's method is psychological warfare, Morris continued. She doesn't just convince people to steal, she makes them believe they're doing the right thing. Look at this. He handed me a printed email chain between Elena and Sarah. My hands shook as I read. Sarah, honey, I'm so worried about your mother. Yesterday she called me Margaret 3 times before remembering who I was. I think her mind is going faster than any of us realized. Have you considered what will happen to your inheritance if she needs expensive medical care? Nursing homes cost $8,000 a month. Elena, I don't know what to do. Mom seems fine to me, but maybe I'm not seeing the signs? She did seem confused at the doctor's office last month. Sweetheart, denial is natural, but you have a responsibility to protect your family's future. There are legal ways to secure assets before they're lost to medical expenses. Let me help you. She's been poisoning Sarah's mind for months, I whispered, reading email after email where Elena planted seeds of doubt about my mental capacity, my financial judgment, my ability to care for myself. Morris nodded grimly. Elena's a master manipulator. She convinced Sarah that stealing from you was an act of love, that she was protecting the family legacy. But here's what your daughter doesn't know. Elena's done this to 3 other families in the past 2 years alone. He showed me files on Elena's other victims. The Rodriguez family in Arizona. Elena convinced the son to steal his mother's restaurant. The Williams family in Oregon. She manipulated the daughter into taking her father's retirement accounts. In each case, Elena took a 50% cut of the stolen assets and disappeared before the families could realize what had happened. The total damage across all her known cases? Over $2 million, Morris said. Your house and savings were supposed to be her biggest score yet. But why target Sarah specifically? I asked, though I was starting to understand. Because you're a widow, living alone, with significant assets and only one child. Elena researches obituaries, divorce records, property values. She builds psychological profiles of potential victims and their families. Then she finds a way to insert herself into their lives. Morris pulled up a timeline on his laptop. Elena orchestrated Jake and Sarah's entire relationship. She encouraged Jake to pursue Sarah after she learned about your property values. She probably coached him on what to say, how to charm her, even when to propose. The betrayal felt like a physical weight crushing my chest. So Jake never loved Sarah at all? Jake's a gambling addict and a weak man, but I think he genuinely cares about your daughter. The problem is, he's also terrified of Elena. She's been controlling his life since he was a teenager. When Elena decided to target your family, Jake didn't have a choice but to help. Morris showed me phone records. Elena's been calling Sarah twice a day for the past month, probably reinforcing the lies about your mental decline and pushing her to move faster. But here's the interesting part. She's also been calling someone else. He pointed to a number that appeared repeatedly in Elena's call log. Vincent Caruso, the loan shark Jake owes money to. Elena's been coordinating with him to put pressure on Jake. It's all choreographed. You mean Jake's gambling debt might not even be real? Oh, it's real. But Elena knew about it before she introduced Jake to Sarah. She probably encouraged his gambling, maybe even funded some of his losses to make him more desperate. Everything's been planned to create maximum pressure on your family. I stared at the evidence scattered across the desk. Photos, emails, phone records, financial documents. It painted a picture of a woman who destroyed families with the precision of a surgeon and the coldness of a snake. Mrs. Henderson, Morris said quietly, there's something else. Elena knows about our investigation. My blood turned to ice. How? Someone's been watching me. My office was broken into last night, but nothing was stolen. They were looking for information. And this morning, I got a call from an unlisted number. A woman with Elena's voice told me to mind my own business and hung up. The room felt like it was closing in on me. So she knows I hired you? Probably. Which means she's going to accelerate her timeline. Your house sale was scheduled to close next week, but I think she's going to push Sarah to accept a cash offer and disappear sooner. Morris closed his laptop and looked directly at me. Mrs. Henderson, we're running out of time. Elena's too smart to leave evidence lying around much longer. If we're going to save your daughter and stop Elena's operation, we need to act now. What do you mean? I mean we're going to set a trap, and you're going to be the bait. As Morris explained his plan, I realized I was about to enter a dangerous game with a woman who had destroyed dozens of families and would have no qualms about destroying mine completely if she felt threatened. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something stronger than fear, determination. Elena Patterson had picked the wrong family to destroy. FBI agent Rivera looked nothing like what I'd expected. She was young, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a presence that commanded respect despite her small stature. When Detective Morris introduced us in a downtown coffee shop, I realized this case had grown far beyond a simple theft. "Mrs. Henderson, what's happened to your family is part of a federal investigation," Agent Rivera explained, sliding a manila folder across the table. "Elena Patterson is running what we call a family infiltration fraud ring across multiple states. Your case is the missing piece we need to shut down the entire operation. Have you ever had to choose between justice and protecting someone who destroyed you? Because I was about to face that impossible choice." Inside the folder were photographs and documents that made my head spin. Elena had created fake identities, forged legal documents, and manipulated families in Arizona, Oregon, Nevada, and now California. The FBI had been tracking her for 3 years, but she was always one step ahead. Until now. "The problem with Elena is that she's extremely careful," Rivera continued. "She never handles the money directly, never puts anything in writing that could incriminate her. She manipulates others to commit the actual crimes while she stays clean." Detective Morris leaned forward. "But with Sarah, Elena made a mistake. She's been more hands-on with this case because the payout is bigger. We have phone records, surveillance footage, even email evidence linking her directly to the fraud." Rivera opened her laptop and showed me a complex web diagram. "Elena's operation works like a pyramid. She's at the top, coordinating everything. Below her are what we call field agents, people like Jake who identify and groom targets. At the bottom are the executors, family members like Sarah who actually commit the fraud." The scope of it was staggering. "How many families has she destroyed?" "We estimate at least 15 over the past 5 years, with total losses exceeding $2 million. But we think she's planning something much bigger. A final score before she disappears permanently." Morris pulled out his phone and showed me recent surveillance photos. "Elena's been meeting with Vincent Caruso almost daily this week. Vincent isn't just a loan shark. He launders money for Elena's operation. We think she's planning to convert all her stolen assets into cryptocurrency and flee the country." "Which brings us to our plan," Rivera said. "We need Sarah to confess to the fraud and agree to testify against Elena. But Sarah has to make this choice voluntarily. We can't coerce her, or any evidence she provides will be inadmissible in court. They wanted me to wear a wire and confront my daughter, to try to turn her against the woman who had manipulated her into destroying our family. The thought terrified me. What if Sarah won't listen? What if Elena has brainwashed her too completely?" "That's a risk we have to take," Rivera admitted. "But Mrs. Henderson, you're the only person who can reach Sarah now. Elena's convinced her that everyone else, her job, her friends, even her extended family, is against her. You're the only voice she might still trust." Morris showed me the surveillance setup they'd prepared around my house. "We'll have agents positioned in unmarked vehicles, audio and video recording everything. If Elena shows up, we'll be ready." "But what about Sarah?" I asked. "If Elena realizes it's a trap, won't Sarah be in danger?" Rivera's expression grew serious. "Mrs. Henderson, Sarah is already in danger. Vincent's been pressuring Elena to wrap up her operations because he's being investigated by another federal task force. Elena's getting desperate, and desperate criminals make fatal mistakes." She showed me intercepted text messages between Elena and Vincent. "Package needs to be delivered by Friday. No delays. What about the girl? She's getting cold feet. The girl is expendable. Package delivery is priority." My blood ran cold. "Elena's planning to abandon Sarah? Or worse," Morris said quietly. "Elena doesn't leave loose ends. Once she has your house money and disappears, Sarah becomes a liability who can identify her. We think Elena's planning to set Sarah up as the sole perpetrator and let her take the fall for the entire fraud." The room was silent as the implications sank in. My daughter wasn't just a victim of manipulation. She was being groomed as a scapegoat for a massive criminal operation. "We estimate we have 48 hours before Elena moves to the next phase of her plan," Rivera said. "After that, both Sarah and the evidence will be gone forever." I thought about Sarah as a little girl, how she used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "Mommy, I'm scared," she would whisper. "Will you protect me?" And I always did. Now she needed protection again, even if she didn't realize it. What exactly do you need me to do? I asked. Morris outlined the plan. I would go to my house tomorrow afternoon when Jake was supposed to be at his job interview, which they suspected was fake. Sarah would be alone, packing items for their planned departure. I would wear a wire and try to get her to confess to the fraud while explaining Elena's manipulation. The key is to stay calm and focus on Sarah's emotions, Rivera explained. Don't accuse her directly. Instead, express concern for her safety and ask questions about Elena's role. Let Sarah come to her own conclusions about what's really happening. As we prepared to leave, Rivera handed me a small device that looked like a button. This is a panic button. If you feel threatened at any time, press it. We'll be inside the house within 30 seconds. Walking home to my depressing motel room, I tried to prepare mentally for what might be the most important conversation of my life. Tomorrow, I would either save my daughter or lose her forever. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging, or you'll lose more than just a house. Elena knew we were coming. Standing on the front porch of my own house, wearing a wire and knowing FBI agents were watching from 3 different vehicles, I felt like I was about to step onto a stage where the rote performance could cost my daughter her life. The key Detective Morris had given me, copied from Elena's surveillance of our locksmith, turned smoothly in the lock that had kept me out of my own home for a week. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Sarah?" I called softly as I stepped inside. The living room was a disaster of packed boxes and stripped walls. My family photos were gone, my furniture pushed into corners, my entire life reduced to items marked "sell" or "keep" in Sarah's handwriting. But it was the sound that broke my heart. Quiet sobbing coming from the kitchen. I found Sarah sitting at our old breakfast table, the one where I'd helped her with homework every night for 12 years, surrounded by legal documents and empty wine bottles. She looked up when I entered, and I barely recognized my own daughter. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair unwashed, her hands shaking as she tried to hide a piece of paper behind her back. "Mom?" Her voice cracked. "How did you get in? Jake said he changed all the locks." Forgiveness is the hardest choice you'll ever make, but sometimes it's the only way to save the people you love. "Honey, we need to talk." I sat down across from her, my heart breaking at how fragile she looked. "Where's Jake?" He's hiding." Fresh tears started flowing. "Mom, I've made such terrible mistakes. I don't know how to fix them." I reached across the table and took her trembling hands in mine. "Sarah, whatever's happening, we can figure it out together. But I need you to tell me the truth about Elena." The reaction was immediate and telling. Sarah's face went white, and she pulled her hands away. "What about Elena? She's been helping us. She's been protecting our family's future." "Sweetheart, Elena's been lying to you. She's not protecting anything. She's stealing from families across the country. This isn't the first time she's done this." Sarah shook her head violently. "No, you don't understand. Elena showed me the medical reports. She showed me how you've been declining mentally. The confusion, the memory problems. Elena said you'd waste everything on medical bills and leave us with nothing." "What medical reports?" I kept my voice gentle, though anger was burning in my chest. Sarah reached behind her and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were what looked like official medical documents with my name on them, detailing cognitive decline, memory loss, and recommendations for immediate asset protection. They were completely fabricated. "Sarah, these are fake. I never had these tests done. Elena created these to manipulate you." "That's impossible. Elena's a lawyer. She wouldn't..." "Elena lost her law license 5 years ago for fraud. She's done this to at least 15 other families. She finds parents with assets, manipulates their children into stealing, then disappears with half the money." I could see the doubt creeping into Sarah's eyes, but also fear. "That can't be true. Elena loves our family. She's been like a mother to me since Dad left." "Honey, Elena orchestrated Jake meeting you. She researched our family for months before Jake ever asked you on a date. She knew about our house, our savings, even my medical history before they got married." Sarah's face crumpled. No, that's not possible. Jake loves me. We fell in love naturally. Elena she just wanted to help when she saw how much we were struggling with his gambling debts." "What gambling debts, Sarah? How much does Jake really owe?" For the first time, Sarah looked confused. "Vincent says it's 200,000, but Jake told me it was only 50,000. Elena said Vincent was lying to pressure us, but..." She trailed off. the pieces finally starting to connect. Sarah, I think Elena and Vincent are working together. I think they created Jake's to pressure both of you into stealing from me. The sobbing stopped abruptly. Sarah stared at me with a mixture of horror and dawning realization. She's been planning this the whole time? I'm afraid so, sweetheart. Sarah stood up abruptly and started pacing. Oh God, what have I done? I destroyed my own mother for a lie? I gave Elena access to all our bank accounts, all our legal documents. Mom, she has everything. Sarah, it's not too late. We can fix this. But I need you to help me stop her before she disappears. She's leaving tonight, Sarah whispered. She told Jake they're flying to Mexico tomorrow morning. She said we needed to finalize the house sale today or lose everything to Vincent. My heart raced. Elena was moving faster than we'd anticipated. Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. The FBI is investigating Elena for elder fraud across multiple states. They need evidence to stop her, but they need someone on the inside to help them. The FBI? Sarah's voice was barely audible. If you testify against Elena, they can protect you. But if Elena disappears with the money, you'll be left holding all the legal responsibility for what happened. Sarah sank back into her chair. She's going to abandon me, isn't she? She's going to let me go to prison while she escapes with everything. Before I could answer, we both heard the front door slam open. Sarah, where are you? Elena's voice echoed through the house, sharp and angry. We have a problem. Sarah looked at me with panic in her eyes. She can't know you're here. If she realizes we've talked. Elena's heels clicked across the hardwood floor, getting closer to the kitchen. In moments, she would discover me sitting there, and our chance to save Sarah would be over. Trust me, I whispered, squeezing Sarah's hand. No matter what happens next, remember that I love you. Elena appeared in the doorway, and her cold eyes immediately locked onto mine. The mask of concerned mother-in-law that she'd worn for 2 years melted away, revealing something truly terrifying underneath. Well, she said, pulling out her phone. Isn't this cozy? Elena stood in my kitchen doorway like a predator who had just cornered her prey. But instead of fear, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The protective rage of a mother whose child was being threatened. Margaret Henderson, Elena said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. You're trespassing in my property. Your property? I stood up slowly, keeping my voice steady. This is my house, Elena, and Sarah is my daughter. Justice feels sweet, but survival? That's what really matters when dangerous people want revenge. Elena stepped into the kitchen, and I noticed she was holding her phone in a way that suggested she was recording our conversation. Sarah remained frozen in her chair, looking back and forth between us, like a child watching her parents fight. Sarah, honey? Elena's voice shifted to the manipulative tone I'd heard in the surveillance recordings. I told you your mother might try to confuse you with lies about our family business. Remember what we discussed about her condition? But something had changed in Sarah's expression. The doubt I'd planted had taken root. Elena, Sarah said quietly, I need you to explain something to me. Why did you tell me Mom's gambling debts were $50,000 when Vincent says it's $200,000? Elena's mask slipped for just a moment. Different debts, sweetheart. Your husband has been less than honest with both of us. And the medical reports about Mom's mental decline? Can you tell me which doctor issued them? Elena's eyes narrowed dangerously. She realized Sarah was questioning her narrative. Sarah, we don't have time for this. Vincent's men are getting impatient, and we need to finish the house transfer today. Actually, I said, Vincent's men aren't coming. Because Vincent works for you, doesn't he, Elena? The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Elena's carefully constructed persona cracked completely, revealing the cold calculation underneath. You stupid woman, she hissed. Do you have any idea what you're interfering with? I've spent 2 years building this operation. Your little house is just one piece of a much bigger game. Sarah gasped. Operation? What operation? Elena laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, sweetheart, did you really think this was about saving money for Jake's gambling debts? Your husband's addiction was useful for applying pressure, but this has always been about something much more valuable. She pulled out her phone and showed us a banking app. $2.3 million, accumulated from 15 families over 5 years. Your mother's house and savings were supposed to put me over $3 million, enough to disappear permanently and live comfortably in a country without extradition treaties. The scope of her crimes was staggering. 15 families? Sarah whispered. 15 families who were too trusting, too naive to protect their assets properly, just like yours. Elena's smile was predatory. Do you know how easy it is to manipulate adult children? A few fake medical reports, some carefully planted doubts about their parents' mental capacity, and suddenly they're begging me to help them protect their inheritance. She moved closer to Sarah, who shrank back in her chair. You were particularly easy, Sarah. So desperate for a mother figure after years of resenting Margaret for your father's abandonment. All I had to do was validate your feelings and offer you a way to secure your future. I stepped between Elena and Sarah. She trusted you. Trust is a luxury for people who can afford it, Elena sneered. Sarah chose to believe what was convenient rather than what was true. She wanted to blame someone else for her financial problems, and I gave her a target. Sarah stood up shakily. You destroyed my relationship with my mother. You turned me into a criminal. I gave you $200,000 and a chance to start over. What you do with that gift is up to you. That's when Sarah did something that made my heart swell with pride. She pulled out her phone and held it up, showing that she'd been recording the entire conversation. I've been recording you for the past 10 minutes, Elena. Everything you just said about the other families, about manipulating me, about the fake medical reports. Elena's face went white with rage. You little bitch. Give me that phone. She lunged for Sarah, but I stepped forward and caught Elena's wrist. Don't you dare touch my daughter. For a moment, we stood frozen in a tableau of confrontation. Then Elena smiled again, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen. Do you really think I didn't prepare for this possibility? She pulled out her own phone and hit a number on speed dial. Vincent? We have a problem at the Henderson house. Yes, both of them. Handle it. My blood turned to ice. Sarah, get behind me. But Elena was already moving toward the back door. Vincent's men are already positioned outside. Did you really think I wouldn't have contingency plans? You have about 3 minutes before they come in to clean up this mess. She paused at the doorway. Sarah, you could have been rich and free. Instead, you chose to be loyal to a woman who would have wasted everything on medical bills and nursing homes. I hope your conscience keeps you warm in prison. As Elena disappeared through the back door, Sarah grabbed my arm. Mom, we have to get out of here. If Vincent's men are really coming. I reached into my pocket and said the panic button Agent Rivera had given me. They're not Vincent's men, sweetheart. They're FBI agents, and they've been waiting for Elena to incriminate herself. The front door burst open, and Agent Rivera's voice echoed through the house. FBI, Elena Patterson, you're under arrest. Through the kitchen window, I could see Elena running across the backyard, but she didn't get far. Agent Rivera and 3 other agents surrounded her before she reached the fence. As they led Elena away in handcuffs, she looked back at the house with pure hatred in her eyes. This isn't over, she screamed. Vincent will make sure you pay for this. But Sarah and I were safe, surrounded by federal agents and Detective Morris. The wire I'd been wearing had captured every word of Elena's confession, and Sarah's recording had provided additional evidence of the entire conspiracy. Is it really over? Sarah asked, her voice small and frightened. Agent Rivera nodded. Elena's operation is finished. But Sarah, we're going to need your full cooperation to prosecute this case and recover assets for all of Elena's victims. As we watched Elena's car disappear down the street, I realized our nightmare was far from over. Elena had mentioned Vincent as if he was still a threat, and I had a terrible feeling that the most dangerous part of this story was just beginning. The keys to my own house felt strange in my hands as I unlocked the front door for the second time in 10 days, but this time, I was coming home for good. The FBI had worked quickly to reverse the fraudulent property transfer. Elena's confession, combined with the forged documents Detective Morris had uncovered, made the legal process surprisingly straightforward. Within a week, my house was legally mine again, my bank accounts were restored, and Elena Patterson was sitting in federal custody awaiting trial. But as I walked through rooms that still bore the scars of Elena's operation, holes in the walls where she'd had Jake remove family photos, boxes of my belongings stacked carelessly in corners, I realized that some wounds take longer to heal than others. Love means making impossible choices. But what would you do if saving your family meant risking your own life? Sarah and Jake were in witness protection while they prepared to testify against Elena. Agent Rivera had explained that Elena's criminal network was larger than they'd initially realized, and there were concerns about retaliation from her associates. Sarah called me every day from a secure location, and each conversation was a step toward rebuilding what Elena had torn apart. "Mom, I know I can't undo what I did," Sarah had said during yesterday's call, her voice thick with tears. "I destroyed our family because I believed a stranger's lies over my own mother's love. How do you forgive something like that?" "Because you're my daughter," I'd replied, "and because Elena didn't just steal our money, she stole your ability to think clearly. That's not your fault, sweetheart." But even as we worked on healing our relationship, new threats were emerging. I was sorting through mail that had accumulated during my week at the motel when I heard frantic knocking at my door. Through the peephole, I saw Sarah standing on my front porch, her face streaked with tears and terror in her eyes. My heart stopped. Sarah was supposed to be in protective custody. I yanked the door open. "Sarah? What are you doing here? Where are the federal marshals?" She collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "Mom, they took Jake. Vincent's men found him when he went to testify to the grand jury. The marshals said there was a leak in the system. Someone told Vincent where to find us." I pulled her inside and locked the door, my mind racing. "Are you safe? Did anyone follow you here?" "I don't know. After they took Jake, I ran. I didn't know where else to go." She looked at me with desperate eyes. "Mom, Vincent left a message. He said if I don't deliver Elena's cryptocurrency wallet passwords by midnight tonight, he's going to kill Jake and come for us next." The room started spinning. "Cryptocurrency passwords? What is he talking about?" "Elena converted all the stolen money into Bitcoin and hid it in encrypted wallets. Only she knows the passwords and she's not talking. Vincent thinks Elena gave the passwords to Jake or me before she was arrested." I sank into a chair, trying to process this new nightmare. Elena was in federal custody, but her criminal network was still operating, and now Jake, the weak, manipulated man who had helped destroy my life, was being held hostage by people who would kill him without hesitation. "Sarah, we have to call Agent Rivera immediately." I tried. Her phone goes straight to voicemail, and the FBI field office said she's unavailable. "Mom, I think Vincent has people inside law enforcement. How else would he know where to find Jake?" The implications were terrifying. If Vincent had corrupted federal agents, then nowhere was safe. Sarah showed me her phone, which displayed a text message from an unknown number. "You have 8 hours. Pier 47, Warehouse 12. Come alone with the passwords, or Jake dies. Then we come for Margaret." "He's threatening you too," Sarah whispered. "Mom, this is all my fault. If I hadn't been so stupid, so greedy." "Stop," I said firmly. "This is Elena's fault and Vincent's fault. We're victims here, not criminals." But even as I tried to comfort Sarah, my mind was working through our options. We could try to disappear, but Vincent had already proven he could track federal witnesses. We could wait for Agent Rivera to return our calls, but Jake might be dead by then. Or, "Sarah, does Elena really have cryptocurrency passwords worth millions?" "I think so. Jake mentioned that Elena bragged about converting everything to Bitcoin because it's impossible to trace. But Mom, even if we could get the passwords from her, Vincent would never just let us go. We know too much and about his operation." I thought about Elena, sitting in her federal cell, probably enjoying the chaos she'd created even from prison. She held the key to saving Jake's life, but she had no reason to help us. Unless, what if Elena doesn't know that Vincent took Jake? I said slowly. What if she thinks her network is still intact? Sarah looked at me with confusion. "I don't understand." "Elena's been in isolation since her arrest. She might not know that Vincent is desperate enough to kidnap federal witnesses. What if we could convince her that helping us is in her own best interest?" It was a desperate plan, but as I looked at my daughter's terrified face, I realized I would do anything to protect what remained of our family. Even if it meant making a deal with the devil, who had already destroyed our lives once. "Mom, you want to visit Elena in prison? I want to save Jake's life and end this nightmare permanently. But Sarah, if we do this, we'll be walking into the most dangerous situation of our lives." As the sun set outside my windows, casting long shadows across the room where this whole nightmare had begun, I realized that Elena's web of destruction was far from finished, and the only way to escape it might be to dive deeper into it than ever before. The Federal Detention Center felt like stepping into a concrete tomb. Agent Rivera had finally returned our calls and agreed to facilitate the meeting with Elena, though she'd made it clear she thought we were making a terrible mistake. "Elena Patterson is one of the most manipulative criminals I've ever encountered," Rivera had warned us. "Even from behind bars, she's dangerous. Don't underestimate her ability to turn any situation to her advantage." But with only 4 hours until Vincent's midnight deadline, we were out of options. Sometimes being a mother means walking through fire for people who hurt you. But that's what real love looks like. Elena sat across from us in the sterile visiting room, separated by reinforced glass and speaking through a monitored phone system. Even in an orange jumpsuit, she maintained an air of superiority that made my skin crawl. "Margaret Henderson," she said, smiling that cold smile I'd grown to hate. "And my dear Sarah, how delightfully predictable that you'd come crawling to me for help." "Elena, Vincent has Jake," Sarah said, cutting straight to the point. "He wants your cryptocurrency passwords, and he's threatening to kill Jake and come after us if we don't deliver them by midnight." Elena's expression didn't change, but I caught a flicker of something, surprise, maybe even concern, in her eyes. "Vincent took Jake? That wasn't part of our arrangement." "Your arrangement?" I leaned forward. "You're still coordinating with him from prison?" Elena laughed. "Oh, Margaret, you really don't understand how sophisticated criminal operations work, do you? Vincent and I have protocols for exactly this type of situation. But kidnapping federal witnesses crosses lines that even Vincent knows better than to cross." She studied our faces for a moment, and I could see her calculating angles and opportunities. "What exactly did Vincent tell you?" Sarah repeated Vincent's demands, and Elena listened with the focused attention of a predator analyzing prey. "Vincent's desperate," Elena finally said. "The FBI raid last week froze several of his money laundering accounts. He needs liquid capital quickly, or his own bosses will eliminate him. That makes him extremely dangerous." "So help us," I pleaded. "Give us the passwords and end this." Elena's smile widened. "And why would I do that? Jake's predicament isn't my problem. In fact, it's rather convenient. Vincent eliminating witnesses simplifies my legal situation considerably." The casual cruelty of her words hit me like a slap. "Jake is your son-in-law. Sarah is your daughter-in-law. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" "Family is a tool, Margaret. Love is a weakness. I taught Jake and Sarah to steal from you because it served my purposes. Now their suffering serves my purposes too." Sarah slammed her hand against the glass. "You're a monster. I'm a businesswoman. And right now, I have something Vincent desperately needs, which means I have leverage. The question is, what are you willing to give me in exchange for Jake's life?" My heart sank. Even from prison, Elena was still playing games, still manipulating situations for her own benefit. "What do you want?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Elena leaned closer to the glass. "I want you to deliver a message to Vincent. Tell him that if he harms Jake, I'll give the FBI everything I know about his entire operation. Names, locations, bank accounts, everything. Vincent has been very careful to insulate himself from direct evidence, but I have recordings of our conversations, copies of financial transfers, even photographs of our meetings. You'd really burn down Vincent's entire operation just to save Jake?" "No." Elena's eyes glittered with malice. "I'd burn down Vincent's operation to maintain control. Vincent thinks he can pressure me by threatening people I supposedly care about. He needs to learn that I don't care about anyone except myself, and that makes me far more dangerous than he realizes." She reached into her jumpsuit pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. "But I'm not giving Vincent anything for free. Sarah, if you want Jake to live, you need to do exactly what I tell you." My blood ran cold. "What are you asking her to do?" Elena pressed the paper against the glass. On it was written a Bitcoin wallet address and what looked like part of a password. This is one of 12 cryptocurrency wallets containing Vincent's share of our operation, approximately $400,000. The full password is split into 3 parts. I have one part, Jake has one part memorized, and the third part is hidden in a location that only Vincent and I know about. You want Sarah to steal from Vincent? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I want Sarah to give Vincent a choice. He can kill Jake and lose access to $400,000 permanently, or he can release Jake and I'll provide the remaining password components after I'm released on appeal. Sarah stared at the paper through the glass. Elena, if I do this, and Vincent doesn't accept your terms, he'll kill both Jake and me. Then you'd better be very persuasive, Elena said with a shrug. But consider the alternative. Vincent kills Jake tonight anyway, then comes for you and your mother tomorrow. At least my way, you have a chance. Agent Rivera's voice crackled through the intercom. Visiting time is over. Elena stood up, still smiling that horrible smile. Sarah, you have 3 hours to make your choice. Save Jake and trust me one more time, or watch Vincent destroy what's left of your family. As Elena was led away, she called back over her shoulder. Oh, and Margaret? If Sarah dies tonight, remember that it's because you taught her to value other people's lives over her own survival. That's a mother's gift that keeps on giving. Walking out of that prison, I felt like we were walking deeper into Elena's web rather than escaping it. But as I looked at Sarah's determined face, I realized that sometimes the only way to defeat a monster is to become willing to sacrifice everything, even your own safety, to protect the people you love. We had 3 hours to save Jake's life, and Elena Patterson, even from behind bars, was still pulling all the strings. 6 months later, I was sitting in my kitchen, watching Sarah frost a birthday cake while Jake played with their new puppy in the backyard. The scene was so normal, so peaceful, that sometimes I had to remind myself that the nightmare had really happened. Elena Patterson was serving 15 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The FBI had used her own evidence against Vincent to dismantle an entire money laundering network that spanned 3 states. Vincent himself had been found dead in his warehouse 2 weeks after Jake's rescue. Apparently, his own bosses hadn't appreciated the attention his kidnapping had brought to their operations. Family isn't perfect, but it's worth fighting for. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what truly matters. The night we'd confronted Vincent had been the most terrifying experience of my life. Sarah had walked into that warehouse knowing she might not walk out, but she'd done it anyway because Jake, despite all his mistakes, was family. When Vincent had laughed at Elena's offer and threatened to kill them both, Sarah had done something that shocked everyone. She'd triggered a tracking device Agent Rivera had hidden in her jacket, bringing federal agents swarming into the warehouse just as Vincent's men were preparing to execute their prisoners. The cryptocurrency passwords Elena had dangled as bait, they'd turned out to be fake. One final manipulation to buy us time for the FBI to position themselves. Even when helping us, Elena couldn't resist playing games. But her games had saved Jake's life and ended Vincent's operation permanently. Mom? Sarah's voice brought me back to the present. The cake's ready. Should I call Jake inside? I smiled, watching my daughter, who looked healthier and happier than she had in years. Therapy had helped both of us process the trauma of Elena's manipulation. Sarah had learned to recognize the signs of emotional abuse, while I'd learned to forgive without forgetting, to trust without being naive. Jake had surprised me the most. Once Elena's influence was removed from his life, he'd thrown himself into recovery, not just from gambling addiction, but from the toxic relationship patterns Elena had programmed into him. He'd gotten a legitimate job at a construction company, attended therapy sessions religiously, and most importantly, he'd proven his commitment to rebuilding our family through consistent actions rather than empty promises. Actually, I said, let me call him. I have something I want to tell both of you. As Jake came inside, still laughing as the puppy tried to follow him, I realized how much our family had changed. We'd been broken apart by lies and manipulation, but we'd chosen to heal through truth and commitment. I have an announcement, I said, pulling out a manila folder. I've decided to start a nonprofit organization to help other families who've been targeted by elder fraud. Detective Morris is going to serve as our chief investigator, and Agent Rivera has agreed to provide law enforcement consultation. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Mom, that's incredible. You're going to help other people avoid what we went through. We're going to help them, I corrected. Sarah, I want you to serve as the victim advocacy coordinator. Your experience with Elena's manipulation tactics could help other adult children recognize when they're being targeted. Jake stepped forward hesitantly. Mrs. Henderson, I know I have no right to ask, but is there a way I could help too? I want to do something meaningful with my life, something that makes up for the damage I caused. I looked at this young man who had helped destroy my life 6 months ago, who had been weak and manipulated and harmful, but who had spent every day since then trying to become someone worthy of my daughter's love. Jake, we're going to need someone who understands the psychology of financial desperation. Someone who can help other victims' families understand how good people can make terrible choices under pressure. If you're willing to share your story publicly, to help other families avoid the traps Elena set for us. His face lit up with something I'd never seen before. Genuine hope. I'd be honored, Mrs. Henderson. I want to spend the rest of my life proving that people can change, that mistakes don't have to define who we become. As we sat around the kitchen table that evening, sharing birthday cake and making plans for the future, I reflected on everything we'd learned. Elena had tried to destroy our family by exploiting our love for each other, turning that love into a weapon of manipulation and betrayal. But in the end, that same love had been what saved us. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. Mom, I never properly thanked you for not giving up on me when I gave up on myself. Elena convinced me that you were the enemy, but you fought for me anyway. That's what mothers do, I said, squeezing her hand. We fight for our children, even when they can't fight for themselves. Jake cleared his throat. Mrs. Henderson, there's something I need to tell you. When Elena first approached me about targeting your family, I had a choice. I could have said no, could have protected Sarah from Elena's influence. I didn't make that choice because I was scared and desperate. But I want you to know that I see that choice clearly now, and I'll never make the same mistake again. We all made mistakes, I replied. The important thing is what we choose to do now. As the evening wound down and Sarah and Jake prepared to leave for their new apartment, paid for with Jake's legitimate construction job rather than stolen money, Sarah paused at the front door. You know what the strangest part is? She said. Elena thought she was teaching me. That family was just a tool to be used, but all she really did was show me how precious real family love actually is. She showed me what happens when you throw it away. After they left, I sat alone in my kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of our healing, family photos back on the walls, Jake's construction drawings spread across the counter where he'd been planning a deck renovation as a surprise for my next birthday, Sarah's therapy workbooks stacked next to recipes she was collecting for our weekly family dinners. Elena Patterson had tried to destroy us by convincing us that love was weakness, that trust was foolishness, that family was just another transaction to be manipulated. But she'd been wrong about the most important thing. Real love doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong enough to fight for people even when they can't fight for themselves. It makes you strong enough to forgive the unforgivable and rebuild from the ruins of betrayal. What would you have done in my situation? Share your story in the comments below, and remember, you're stronger than you think. Love is stronger than manipulation, truth is stronger than lies, and family, real family built on honesty and commitment, is stronger than any force that tries to destroy it. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what truly matters, and what matters most is never the house or the money or the assets that criminals want to steal. What matters most is the choice to keep loving, keep fighting, and keep believing that people can change, families can heal, and justice, real justice, always finds a way to win in the end.